So where we left off last was we split out the wire brackets on top, or the wiring harness, into a different bump from the other two. And if you want more complexity and control over that, you may want to split it out even further. I'm thinking like the nuts and bolts, I like the way those are looking, so I think they can use the same bump as this. Maybe some of this is too deep, but I really like how this is looking. So if you wanted to kind of adjust between those, it would get a bit more complex and more than I want to cover, in this class. So I'd say right now, this is looking pretty good. This up here is we just need to finish off the plastic top and this piece. So we're going to paint those attributes over in Photoshop for the bump. If you wanted to take the main body and change this color over here, what we could do is go to the side view, and we still have our reference images in here. If you click on the color and click the eyedropper, we can just kind of pick something that's in that mid-tone range of that blue. And let's go back to this camera to render with the perspective. And now if I render it should look more like the blue we're seeing in the reference image. So that kind of helps out a lot to sell that this is the same piece as the other one. There's not really anything breaking up, the highlights though on this piece, so we'll want to fix that. So while this is rendering, I'm going to grab the main body and go to the UV editor. And in class, some students have been having trouble. Actually, let's just select this because they're both on the same one. Students have been having trouble with it crashing if they export as a target. So let's all export as PNGs. So under image, I'm going to do a UV snapshot. And 4096 by 4096, we want as a PNG. I'm going to go to browse. And we're going to save this inside the images. And let's call this one main underscore parts underscore UVs. So the two main parts, the black top and the main body, are inside here, and that's why I called it main parts. And we already called UVS on the hardware one, so we want to do the same thing. So we remember that this is just the UV snapshot. So I'm going to apply and close. And let's kill this render. Okay, good. I got worried for a second that it was crashing because I was rendering this guy at the same time as kind of baking out that texture. So make sure that you probably don't do that. So make sure it's not rendering when you're trying to bake out that texture. So I'm going to go back to Photoshop, and if we want, we can close these guys out because we're done with that portion of it. And let's go ahead and open up from the images the main parts UVs. Alright, so we can't see the UVs right now, so I'm going to create a base layer. And let's call it that. Base underscore layer. And we know we want this at 50% gray, so I'm going to select my foreground color and just somewhere around 50% gray. Place it, and then if you do Option Delete on the laptop, that should fill this. We can barely see the wireframe because right now it's set to white. So I'm going to select this and call it wireframe. I double click to do that. I'm going to Command I to invert that. And then the layer blending mode, I'm going to set to multiply. And that's going to help me see it. If it's still not dark enough for you, what you can do is duplicate this layer by dragging and dropping it here. And you could do that 3-4 times if you need to, and then just Command E to merge those layers down. So now you have kind of a thicker, darker wireframe there. So up here is the main body, and this down here is that black plastic top. And for this, Right now we're just going to focus on creating the bump, so I'm going to create a group here, call this bump, and let's just put the color group out there right away too. It's not going to necessarily hurt anything. We're going to open up that styrofoam texture. So under images, we have that styrofoam. You may pick something that looks a little bit different. And I'm going to unlock this layer. I'm going to go to my move brush, and if you hover you can see the hotkeys. So V is the hotkey. I'm just going to drag this over here and drop it. I'm never going to use this as the color. It just wouldn't make any sense. So I'm going to go ahead right away and just desaturate it. If I was going to use this for color, I would not desaturate it yet because I'd want a version of it with color. I would say smaller than that, so I'm going to hit Command T, which is free transform, and I'm holding down Shift and grabbing the corner to scale that down so the size of these dots match the size of the reference of the spec. So if I go to here, you can kind of see those bulges in the spec here. It's getting somewhat close to this. I go a little bit smaller. So Command T for free transform, hold down Shift, let's go to about there. I'm going to use filter, other, high pass to kind of flatten that out a little bit. So maybe right about there and hit OK. And then I think these are bumping out way too much. So you can do something like a levels adjustment. So image, adjustment, levels. And by moving, some of this stuff, you can actually kind of flatten out that image. Right? So what I'm doing is kind of taking out a lot of the blacks so that the distance or the variance between black and white is a lot less. So you can bring this down and just kind of clip that pattern, if you will. Maybe want to go the opposite way. Let's try doing something like this. Okay. Aren't as sharp on this bump, so I'm going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And it'd be less than that. So maybe something like this. Hit OK. Now I'm going to use the move, and we'll start down here. And I'm just going to hold down Option and Shift and start. Oops, that guy didn't quite snap, so I'm going to bring it back to line up. Not sure why these guys. Usually it snaps right in place. That one did. There we go. I'm just going to fill this whole top area. And we don't need to necessarily look at the reference right now, so I'm going to shift that back over. And I want it to fill up this part too, so I'm going to keep going. A couple more. There we go. And I'm just using the arrow key to push that back just till they're touching. I'm going to use Command E to put all those layers into one. And then same thing, Option Shift, and let's just move this up a few times. And you can use those arrow keys to kind of fix it if you go too far, like I'm doing. And let's just do one more so it covers. Same thing, Command E. And main underscore body underscore BMP, all in caps. So that's the bump for the main body. And I know I'm definitely going to have to adjust this some. For the blue plastic top, I just want some scratches up there. So I'm going to open up. Let's look at this plastic. Yeah, this has a lot of scratches. Let's go with that. I know it's what we originally intended. So same thing, unlock it. So just click on the little lock. And then with the move tool up here selected, I'm going to drag that into here. That'll create a new layer. Let's move this one into the bump group. This one we're not going to use the color on either, so right away I could call this black top BMP. We can desaturate it, so image, adjustments, desaturate. And I think looking at, these are like the sides to that. These scratches may be a little bit big, so I'm going to kind of scale this down so I can sort of feel what those scratches are going to look like on there. And because we basically have the same texel density throughout all these parts, which we need, I can now do the same thing I did up here with just Alt-Shift. Just, oops, use the arrows to move that back if you go too far. You can see this one has definite seams in it, so I'm going to need to fix those up. The top one was a little more seamless, which made my life easier. Command E to bring all these down to one layer. Option Shift with the Move tool, just move that down once. Alright, and Command E to merge that down. Now I'm going to use my healing brush. So it's not out here, so I'm going to go to my search, look up the spot healing brush, just click that. And now any of these seams I'm going to want to go through and fix. And I'll do a first pass on this. One thing I can say is there's some areas in here that are pretty obvious that they're repeating, so we'll probably want to take care of those as well. So I'm just looking at where these kind of things are that are seams, right? And then areas that just I can tell they're repeating all over the place. I'm taking some of them out and I'm leaving some there. So I'm not going to take too much time doing this, just because this is a first pass. You can take more time kind of updating this, sort of getting it to where you want. Right, take some pride in your work. We want to get this, when we're done, looking as real as possible. So anywhere I'm kind of seeing these patterns that repeat a lot, I'm not necessarily replacing all of it, but I'm just trying to use the spot healing brush to change what that pattern looks like. And for these parts, we may see some seams in our model from these textures, so we may have to go back and paint some seams on these. For the smaller parts, I think we're going to be okay, because there weren't any blatant seams in the render. So this looks pretty good, so let's do File, Save As. And this, we're going to go BMP for bump. We're going to change this to a PNG. And we want this one saved in our source images. Okay. So main part's bump. Hit OK. And then we're going to save this one more time. Luckily, also my wireframe usually had one on top. So let's move that up. So I should have hid that before I saved it. But because it was below in the layer stack, it wasn't a big deal. So if you're wondering why your wireframe disappeared, it's because we put all those layers on top of it. Just move it to the top and make sure you hide it when you're saving out these textures. I'm going to turn it on when I save the Photoshop document. So File, Save As. And this one we're going to save inside of Images. And we'll probably just call this one main part 01 as our Photoshop doc. So we're not, constantly saving over the same file. We're going to iterate on this as well. You can either minimize or close Photoshop because we shouldn't need it right now. But in the next video, we're going to apply these bump maps and adjust them.